In 2010, France was a Christian-majority nation. By 2020, it wasn't. The United Kingdom, a country literally built on Christianity, with a monarch who serves as the head of the Church of England, saw its Christian population drop below 50% in just 10 years. And in the Netherlands, the majority of people now identify with no religion at all. This isn't some fringe conspiracy theory. This is data published by the Pew Research Center in 2005, based on over 2,700 censuses and surveys worldwide. And it raises a question that most people are afraid to ask out loud. What happens to the soul of Western civilization when the faith that shaped it simply disappears? Now, before you click away, let me be clear. This is not a video about good versus evil. This is not about demonizing any group of people. This is about following the numbers, the cold, hard demographic data, and asking where they lead. So if that sounds interesting to you, stick around because the numbers tell a story that almost no one is talking about, honestly. Let's start with the elephant in the room. Europe is not having babies. In 2024, the European Union recorded a total fertility rate of just 1.34 children per woman. That is the lowest number in the history of the European Union. To put that in perspective, demographers say you need about 2.1 children per woman just to keep a population still. At 1.34, Europe is not just declining. Is collapsing in slow motion. Countries like Spain and Italy are at 1.1. Malta hit 1.01. That's essentially one child per woman. These are not just statistics. These are entire civilizations that mathematically cannot sustain themselves without outside help. And this is where the story gets really interesting. Because while Europe's native population is aging and shrinking, there is one demographic group that is growing rapidly. Between 2010 and 2020, the number of Christians in Europe fell by 9%. That's a loss of roughly 50 million people. Meanwhile, the Muslim population in Europe grew by 16%, reaching 46 million. And the religiously unaffiliated, the people who check none on the census, exploded by 37%, reaching 190 million. Now here's the part that really makes you think. The median age of a Christian in Europe is 45. The median age of a Muslim in Europe is 34. That 11-year gap is enormous in demographic terms. It means the Muslim population in Europe is significantly younger, significantly more likely to be in their childbearing years, and significantly more likely to have children. Muslim women in Europe average about 2.6 children each. Non-Muslim European women average 1.6. That single extra child per woman, compounded over generations, completely reshapes the math. And on top of that natural growth, there's migration. According to Pew Research projections from 2017, even if all immigration to Europe stopped completely, not slowed down but stopped entirely, Europe's Muslim population would still grow from about 26 million to 36 million by 2050. Under a medium migration scenario, the one researchers consider most realistic, Muslims could make up over 11% of Europe's population by 2050. Under a high migration scenario, that number jumps to 14%. And remember, these projections were made before the continued waves of migration from Syria, Afghanistan, and sub-Saharan Africa in the years that followed. But wait, the decline of Christianity in Europe isn't primarily being caused by Islam. That's the part people misunderstand. The biggest shift is not from the cross to the crescent. It's from the cross to nothing. Pew Research found that globally, for every one person who joins a religion, 3.2 people leave one. And the religion people are leaving most, Christianity. This is happening at a staggering scale. The pews are emptying not because mosques are pulling people away, but because Europeans, especially young Europeans, are simply walking away from faith altogether. In Germany, Catholic mass attendance has cratered from over 15% in 2003 to just 6.6% in 2024. Over 500,000 Germans formally left the Catholic Church in a single year. In the United Kingdom, the Church of England is estimating that 3,000 to 5,000 of its parish churches are either closed or used only intermittently. And in France, more mosques and Muslim prayer centres have been built in the last 30 years than Catholic churches were built in the entire previous century. So what does all of this mean for the future? Let me paint two pictures. Picture one. 100 years from now, much of Western Europe is culturally unrecognisable from what it was in the 20th century. The great cathedrals of Paris, London, and Rome still stand, but they function as museums, event spaces, maybe even mosques, as they already do in some parts of the Netherlands and the UK. Christianity, the faith that built Western law, art, philosophy, and the very concept of human rights as we understand them exists as a cultural memory, not a living tradition. Picture two. Something shifts. Perhaps a cultural revival, a return to tradition, or a new form of European identity emerges that reconnects people with their heritage. History, after all, is not a straight line. The data tells us what is happening now. It doesn't guarantee what happens next. Here's what the data does tell us with certainty. Europe is at a demographic crossroads unlike anything it has faced in 1,000 years. Its native population is aging, its birth rate has hit rock bottom, its historically dominant faith is in freefall, and a younger, faster-growing religious community is steadily expanding its presence. Whether you see this as a crisis, an evolution, or simply the natural rhythm of history depends on your perspective. But one thing is undeniable. The Europe your grandchildren inherit will look, sound, and believe very differently from the one your grandparents knew. If this video made you think, hit that subscribe button. We go deep on stories like this every week, stories that the mainstream won't touch with the honesty they deserve. Drop a comment and tell me, do you think Europe can reverse this trend, or is the trajectory already locked in? I'll see you in the next one.